Hey, here's what I'm realizing. There's two ways to live here. Animals can move as one. A school of fish, they move as one, yeah? A flock of birds as well, or a herd of gazelle. The reason they can move as one is because they're in the present moment. When they're in the present moment, there is no ego. Now, animals have their unique personalities, and that's why they can go off and be separate and do their own thing, just like we can. But humanity doesn't move as one. We can't do the same thing. Not that it's not possible, but we're not in a state to do it now. And why is that? Because we don't live in a state of the present moment. We don't live in flow. The state of the present moment is not in the future, and it's not in the past. It's present. So what happened? And this is what the Buddha stepped into. This is what Christ stepped into. We can use other people like Lao Tzu. I'm just going to go with those three off the top of my head. But they speak differently. They have different energy. They have a different vibration. They're not in fear anymore. And that is when you're not in fear, you have the direct connection with the creative spirit. So in order to access this state, we have to shed the fear-based programming. It's not possible to shed it without deleting it and reinstalling new programming. Because this is our inheritance. This is what we inherited from our society, from our family, from our friends. So the way to personal power is through shadow integration, through positive affirmations, to personal power, to your gifts to realize your path of purpose. So when people say, we're in a prison, this is a prison planet, we're in hell, it's a partial truth. Fear itself is the prison, actually. That's what keeps you bound. But the key is inside here, right? So there are two wolves inside of us. You have the wolf. You can feed the wolf of fear. You can feed the wolf of love. That's a shift in your conscious vibration. So we can move out of fear and into the love-based frequencies, which puts us in direct connection with the creative spirit. The ego will then become subservient. Now all of the answers come from the inside. All the directives come from the inside. You're not seeking outside. The ego is subservient to the higher self. And the ego needs to be tamed, just like fighting a dragon, which then comes under your wing, under your side. Now then you use the ego as a car. It's your tool. It helps you to navigate here and access your personality. Just like, animals have their own respective ego as well. But they're always in connection with the creative spirit. So that's my realization this morning. So that the fear-based consciousness is the mind, is the state of fear, is the ego. It's all the same thing. It's synonymous. Stepping outside of it into higher states of consciousness is love. Gives you direct connection to the creative spirit. That gives you, when you step into personal power, by integrating the shadow, you get into personal power. Personal power opens up your ability to receive your gifts. You receive your gifts, it integrates with your personality, and you activate your purpose. In the present, you have a direct connection with the creative spirit, with Source. There is no fear. And animals in these states also are not experiencing fear. It's not possible to have a connection with the creative spirit or the Source, whatever you want to call it, if you're in fear. It's impossible, actually. They're opposite. You have to step outside of fear in order to have that connection. That's why we're kept in fear perpetually. Everything keeps us there. All the programming, since even before you're born, through the pregnancy process, keeping us in fear keeps us disconnected from the creative spirit. Now we can access it in moments, but to have access to it in the present, in perpetuity, is a very different type of experience. You discover your purpose. It's a path, just like the hero's journey. Your purpose starts to unfold. day by day by day, because now you're not operating in fear. Now you're operating more in the frequency of love. Not that the fear doesn't come and go. They will come in. The thought forms will come in, and we can make a choice. At that point, it's a choice. Do you engage with it, or do you resist it and try to move up? And so it's a little bit of like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, because we all share the same mind. You know, you have your own personality, but the collective consciousness is one. This is not my idea. You know, you can read about this and try to understand it, but this idea is ancient. Like, you know, one example is Krishnamurti talking about it, but all of it's ancient, so let's just leave it at that. Anyway, so the ego needs to become our servant. It's not evil, but it is our adversary here. It's not our enemy, but it is our adversary, because when we are in ego, we are in fear-based consciousness in the mind. The ego equals the mind. The mind equals limitation, because all experience is limited. The mind equals fear. That's how it is. And if we try to understand this with the mind, that's a circular process. You can never understand it. This is experiential. So you have to change what you do and the programming in order to have an experience to know. Not to understand, but to know. And so trying to understand with using this is not going to get us anywhere. So the ego needs to be tamed and brought under the control of the higher spirit. Everything here is a paradox. So it's not black or white. It's not like this or that. And I know it sounds like fear or love is that kind of decision, but it's actually not. That's the paradox. It's so hard to explain with words. It's just not. You can't get to it with words, man. It's so experiential. You can't get to it with words. Okay, I'm doing my best. I don't know what else to say. Here's another perfect representation from a movie about how you have to tame the ego for it to come under your control, under the control of the higher self. In the movie Avatar, whatever those flying beasts were that the blue people needed to get under their control, and then so you conquer it, and then there's a bond that's formed, and then that becomes your partner, your creature for life. But at first it's kind of adversarial. The same thing in the movie Dune. Those giant earthworms, sandworms, there was only a few people who could ride them. And so, you know, it's an adversarial relationship like in the beginning, but then it's like a dragon. It can be slain to come under, the ego can be slain to come under the control of the higher self. So that's what these stories are telling us. So I wanted to share that. Okay, so why do they try to keep us in a state of fear? Because the mind, all is mental, the first Hermetic principle. The mind creates the outside world. So they keep us in a low state in order to create the world that they want, not the world that you can create. So when you move out of fear, you become your own creator and you create the world that you want. Now, if we can do this collectively, everything changes. But it starts at the personal level with each individual, individual, with each one of us, with each personality, with each human. And then, so be careful what you think, be careful what you put in, you know, don't feed the negative thought forms. It's not who you are, it's not your identity, don't identify with it. When the energy pulls you down and you're in a depressive state, don't stay there, pull yourself up. The way to do this is through gratitude, positive affirmations, because gratitude pulls you out of pride, pulls you out